most common conversations we have here at the Joinery Coach at this time of year. And this time of year is the time prior to when everybody's getting crazy busy, or you might be crazy busy right now. We often have a lot of conversations with business owners that are thinking about improving things in their business, but they want to put it off until the quiet times in January or February. It's a really common conversation we have. And in our groups, we often wonder about why this is the case. But in reality, we know that people often think that they're too busy, they don't have time to make improvements. The reality is people that do actually start making improvements in the busy times get the best benefits. And it's really quite simple when you think about it. It's a little bit like a heart test. Any of you that are of a certain age and you had a heart test, you know that when they test your heart, they don't ask you to sit on a chair when you're resting so that they can test your heart. They put you on a treadmill and put you under stress. And that's the best time for them to be able to measure what's going on within your heart. Because they can't measure it when you're resting. They need to measure it when you're busy and when you're under stress so that they can see what's going on. Business is exactly the same. If you want to make improvements in the areas of your business that need help most, you can't do it in the quiet times. You have to do it when times are busy. That is the best time, without a shadow of a doubt, to make improvements in your business. So if you're on the fence thinking about when should you start making business improvements, well, of course, the answer is right now is always the best time. But if you're actually thinking that you'll put it off to the quiet times, you're actually going to miss out on the massive benefit that's in front of you right now. The massive benefit and the massive return on any investment you're going to put into an improvement program is found when times are busy, because that's when the most activity in your business is occurring. So if you make improvements in your business, you're going to make more and more rapid improvements in those times. So we find time and time again, people that have been with us prior to this period of time or have been with us for a few years. Within the second year, now they're going through their busy time and they're going, amazing, this year isn't as stressful as it was last year, and what was a busy time is now a calm time, but we got through the same amount of work. We can have some time off for our family, we made more profit, and we had less stress. That's really the result of a really good business improvement program. So I'd really encourage you to have a listen to today's podcast, because I'm introducing you to Alastair Johnson, who is from Freebird Interiors in the UK. Alastair has joined us and been with us for about a year and a half now. And Alastair joined us at a time when he was under probably the most stress in his life. They were moving house, they were upgrading their business, they were implementing a new factory, and he didn't put off what he knew he needed to do until times were quiet. He knew that he needed help, and he knew he needed it right now. And he reached out and he joined the program, and I think you'll really enjoy his journey and his story. I really appreciate Alastair for sharing this with us, because he's been very open and transparent with his improvements, and he was willing to share his story with us here today. And the interesting thing about Alastair's story is it goes along the journey of many joinery businesses that sometimes get stuck at certain places, but Alastair didn't get stuck, and he's still continuing to put amazing improvements in his business. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Alastair Johnson from Freebird Interiors in the UK. Alastair's going to tell us his story, and I think you'll find it really interesting. Please, if you'd like to engage more in these conversations, join us in our Facebook group, the Joinery Business Hub, free Facebook group. You'll just have to answer 3 questions, and we'll let you in and we can have a chat. Without any further ado, here is Alastair and his story, and we'd love to hear your conversations on the other side. Have an amazing day, and hopefully we'll chat soon. Cheers. All right, so welcome everyone to the Joinery Business Podcast and the Joinery Coach Podcast with Alastair. Alastair, now I wanted to just let you introduce yourself and talk about your business and where you've come from. So I'll just let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Alastair Johnson. I'm based in Sheffield in the UK. I come from a background of architectural training, but I always loved making things. And long story short, I circled back to taking an apprenticeship, a loose apprenticeship, not a formal apprenticeship in joinery in my late 20s, after looking all over for an opportunity to retrain and almost giving up. Worked with a slightly unreliable joiner who really just needed someone who could drive. That's why he advertised for an adult apprentice. And then much sooner than I was comfortable with, found myself out on my own running a small joinery business, self-employed. And probably ever since have had a little bit of an imposter mentality, and I think quickly specialized in design-oriented fitted furniture, because I guess it fitted my skills that I had previously.
Yeah. So when we first met up, Freebird was sort of on the verge of growing into something a little bit larger. What was the impetus for connecting with us, and what was that sort of next stage that you were looking for?
Well, I was running a business that had grown from my garage at the back of my house.
Yeah.
And that was raising issues with deliveries, large trucks come in, and it being a residential area. And the main driver, though, was we needed to move house. And I knew once we moved house, I didn't want to keep running the business from the back of the house.
Yeah.
So in all honesty, I've been a bit of a reluctant business owner. It's been a series of steps and not really a grand vision to one day own a huge business. That's never really been my main motivation.
Yeah.
But I found myself going down this route. And I think that was the turning point where I said, okay, this is what I'm doing. Let's really do this properly. And in the midst of COVID, because that's just how the timing fell, we were taking on a pretty sizable new unit. And I thought, well, we've got to consider this a proper business now. And if I'm going to be spending money on infrastructure, then it doesn't make any sense to not also invest in how to do this properly. So that was my reasoning, that I needed some expert support. I think because I hadn't really come from a background of doing this. I hadn't seen someone else run a successful joinery business. It all felt new and quite scary.
We've talked a fair bit about the mindset of a lot of people in this industry, and you and I kind of came from, the maker's mindset. And we've talked a little bit about, non-business mindset, makers turning into business owners. Talk a little bit about your journey of going at least farther along the journey of becoming a business owner and having a business mindset, and getting, I wouldn't say leaving the maker's mindset behind, but adding more to your skill set mentally about having the business mindset.
Well, prior to connecting with you, I dabbled with various mentoring or networking groups. I was in a group that was a mixture of networking and business coaching. And I think I slowly realized how vital it was to get that sort of input. And the underlying focus of a lot of these groups was about your mindset and how you think and how you invest in what you know as being really the most vital resource. So I think it took me a period of a few months or years to really embrace that and see the value of that. And so I don't think I could have signed up for your program without that journey of learning, and also seeing other people go on that journey and their businesses thrive as a result of how they change their way of thinking.
Yeah, it's you've got to be ready once you start on a path like this, don't you? Otherwise, start at a lower level, because when we first started, you had already started that journey, like you say, and it was the wheels were turning, right? And it was sink or swim, sort of.
I think that's exactly it. It was sink or swim. And I've spoken to others in the industry who, through COVID, reached the same decision, that it's like it was the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah. And
I think, we were ready to take a unit. We had a verbal agreement with our landlords for a unit which was bigger than we'd first been looking for. But we'd been looking for a year or two prior to this.
Yeah.
Found this place which was just excellent value, and we thought, we can't turn this opportunity down. Hadn't quite signed on the dotted line, and then the first lockdown happened in the UK. And I completely thought at that time, right, that's it. I'm going to just have to quit this.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see us taking that sort of a financial risk at that time.
Yeah.
But then within weeks, we saw an increase in inquiries, and in fact, an increase in bookings. And although there was still a strong element of risk, I thought, well, it stands to reason if people are stuck at home, working practices are going to change, most likely long term. We're probably in a reasonably secure industry, all things considered. And then the final thing that made us take action was the government bounce back loan being announced in the UK.
Right.
And we thought, we're never going to get better terms of finance. So it is now or never.
It is true. Money's cheap right now. And that's true around the entire world. So it's going to have to be paid back at some time, right? So we've got to make it work for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been working together for about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's been enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to what the future holds as well. We've had some interesting times along this journey so far. Do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know that you have a fairly large following on YouTube and people that follow your journey, and they're very intrigued and very interested in the journey that you've been on. And the actual relationship with a coach and a client is a different sort of a relationship to what most people are used to. And if I'm reading right, it probably took you a little while to kind of get in tune with what that relationship is and how it works. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for people that are following you along, and how you've kind of adjusted and changed, and so have we along that journey as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, when you introduced that just then and you said you have to say it's been, I was sort of on tenterhooks thinking what you're going to say, because there have been times when we've had friction between us, but I'm glad you think it's been enjoyable, because I do as well. I feel we have a positive relationship, and I think that's really key, that the coaching thing is about, well, it stands and falls on the quality of the relationship.
Yeah.
And then that's got a lot to do with trust. And at the moment of making the decision to sign up for the program, there's got to be a certain amount of trust, which is a bit of a decision. It's an informed decision, but it's a bit of a risk, like so many things in business. And I do remember, in fact, right at the start, you actually almost didn't accept us on the program, because I think we were wavering and you weren't sure if we were ready, because you clearly only want to work with people who are going to do the work and be committed. So, but in fact, I mean, I don't know if that was a bit of a test at the time, but I felt at the time it was almost like a test, because I suddenly thought, no, I really want to make this work. And I sort of pushed back and said, yeah, we do want to do this, and we'll do what's necessary.
Yeah.
I think there have been certain moments along the journey where I think what I'm trying to say is that I became conscious that as a coach, you can see the bigger picture, and you can see where this business could go based on all your experience of seeing other businesses go from small to more successful, not necessarily to big.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if I want to go that way. And I'm not entirely sure if the path to success that's in your mind is the path I want to go down. Do you know what I mean? And I do sometimes feel I'm maybe not the simplest person to coach, because I think part of that is you've had to help me draw out of myself, what do I really want?
Yes.
And part of the pushback has been, I've got a kind of burgeoning business on the social media side. And I'm often thinking, well, would my life be easier if I just became one of these DIY YouTubers without all the complexity of a fitted furniture business? And so I think together we've been kind of wrestling with that question. And I think coming to a middle ground where I've had to accept I've got something that's working and that's really a good thing in the furniture business.
Yeah.
And a lot of my resistance to growing that is frankly is fear, because I feel less in my comfort zone managing a business than making a video, which, is very enjoyable and can be financially rewarding, but has its own risks.
Yeah, and it's relatively easy to do, right?
Yes. That's right. And there's been times when I've said to you, well, this whole fitted furniture business thing, it's terribly complex, isn't it? And sometimes you've said, well, no, actually, it's quite simple. And I find that very frustrating because it doesn't seem simple. But I think what you're saying is, well, if you just put each brick into place, each of these steps that you're leading me through, we can create a business that is almost turnkey.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the trust comes in, that because it seems like such a huge task to me, I sort of have to trust the process and trust that you're going to help me take one step at a time until then all the foundations in place, and we can go, yeah, this will work.
But it does come back to that mindset thing, doesn't it? If we think it's complex, it's going to be complex. If we focus on making something that's complex now easy, then we will make it easy. And it is a very much an approach and a mindset to how we're going to do this. And, we've worked together for quite a while now on systemizing your business, putting in standard procedures, and you've made great steps forward in making what was previously a complex thing now quite simple and easy for somebody else to do.
Well, yes, and I suppose it's testament to that I was off sick last week, just nothing major, but I thought I'd best rest up at home, and we'd just taken on a new member of staff.
Right.
And it seemed like a bit of a bad time to not be around the workshop. But actually, Brady, who's long established in the business,
Yep.
and Matt, our new staff member, they were just getting on with things. And I thought, well, haven't we done well that that I'm not essential? I'm not essential to every aspect.
Yeah.
I can leave them doing it, and they know how to make things. And in fact, I think the positive thing of that was releasing Brady to do the training of Matt, because Brady's stepping up to a new role, which you as the Joinery coach team have really empowered him to do. You've given him resources on that. Sorry, I should have silenced this. I'll turn it off.
So that's the team building side of things, because your business is essentially going to be a team. So,
yeah, well, that's right. And I think it's been nice to see how your resources as the Joinery coach team have sprung into action when we've needed them, because we have, people often ask me about how much does it cost. I won't say exactly how much it costs, because that's up to you. It might have changed since I signed up, but we have a monthly outgoing, which at times I've been tempted to grumble and say to myself, oh, is this worth it? But then when we really need it, it's like all these resources spring into action. So I'm getting coaching for Brady as a team member as part of the package. And even at normal times, there's a huge amount of resource there. I think something I want to say about the coaching relationship, though, is there's this funny dynamic of we'll ultimately only get out what we put in and what we're willing to access. And that's one of the challenging dynamics of it, is that it will stand and fall on whether I implement, because you can't run my business for me.
Right.
And I think that's where the trust comes in as well, because if I was to sort of withdraw and become worried about the cost and fixate on that, then it would almost be self-fulfilling. And I often find little phrases that you drop into our coaching sessions come back into my head. And something you hinted at just then was something along the lines of you see or you find what you're looking for.
Yes.
So if your mindset tilts towards suspicion or lack, then you tend to find that and fulfill that. So yeah, I think you always have to sort of choose to be proactive and engage with the process.
Well, we often have this conversation around value. Do people find value from being in the program? And the reality is, if you were to tap in, and the extensiveness of the program itself with the content, we've got virtually 4, maybe even now 5 coaches available for anybody in the program on tap. The reality is, if you were to actually gauge in some way, shape, or form the actual value of the program, it's off the charts, the value that you can measure. So that's not where the value is to be found. The value is to be found in what are you taking away from that, and what are you actually applying in your business, and what are the results from you doing that? Yeah.
But I think that maybe that's been the key mindset shift from when I was running a small self-employed business to then going through these networking and coaching programs is accepting the difference between upfront cost and true return on investment, really value in the sense of return on investment. I know what you often say to me is you aim to make the cost of your program negligible because of the return.
Yes. And
so now almost 60 months later, we're consistently making profit with our significantly increased outgoings.
Yeah. It
could be more. I'd like it to be more, but it's very healthy. And I can say definitively, we wouldn't be in the place we're in without the input that we've had from the Joinery coach.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to exactly quantify what the difference could be, but I think as much as anything, it's the morale boost that, I might possibly have quit by now if I didn't have someone to fall back on.
So there's a cost of not doing something too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of points where when we have had a bit of friction, it's usually been my resistance and my discomfort in taking a step where I've sort of known I need to do it, but I really don't want to, because there's still that craftsman part of me saying, well, I want to make everything. I want to do everything myself. And you reminded me recently of how much now I just take for granted that we've got a fitter, but how resistant I was to that for ages. But you just, gently and sometimes firmly just kept beating that drum and saying, well, you need to take this step. And I was saying, oh, well, we'll never find anyone that cares about the work as much as I do. But we did.
Yeah.
And now we just trust him. So we've got Neil fitting for us.
And now it's just a normal way that you're running your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tactical stuff. Like you've been on a journey in your factory and implementing lean practices and getting flow happening in your factory. Can you identify maybe three things that have happened in your factory that have been game changers for the flow happening there?
Well, I think having the luxury of a clean sheet to start from, so it's sort of a big picture factor, but going into an empty space and accessing yours and Hamish's lean expertise to apply principles that were new to us right from the start.
Oh, yes. From the very beginning, it was fun.
Yeah. So the whole idea of linear flow, end to end, things which seem so obvious because they just make sense when you know them. But I probably would have carried on without your input. I would have carried on with my very piecemeal way of approaching things. Like we'll just put something there and then something there, and then we go, oh, we're walking back and forth. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the lean mentality led to me right at the start saying to the landlord, we need a new shutter. So you had a shutter at the far end. And I thought, how are we going to get flow in this long, narrow space if goods are coming in at that end and going out at that end, and they've got to go back and forth?
Yeah.
Because there was a big spray booth in the middle, so we couldn't get a loop very well.
Yeah.
So I said to the landlord, look, we'd really like to put a shutter in here. And we've been very fortunate with the landlord that he just said, well, okay, yeah, that would be quite good for the long term. So he just did it, didn't even charge us. But sorry, getting back to your question. So the idea of flow from end to end was absolutely key. So that's informed every decision we then made. I think then waste control, or offcuts control, I should say.
Yeah.
Because waste, I'm now understanding, can mean a lot more than bits of wood.
Yeah, scraps and offcuts are scraps and offcuts. Waste is process waste.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And well, perhaps I could say that's one of the key things is a new understanding of waste. Because I look now back on my photos and videos, which are on YouTube of my old workshop, and I just can't believe the clutter we were working in. And I see it with different eyes.
Yeah.
Because at the time I saw security. I saw stuff on shelves, which meant I had material to grab or I had jobs part made going through. I look at it now and I think, what a huge distraction and what a waste.
False sense of security, having stuff around you.
Yeah. But we were, periodically, like every 3 to 6 months, we'd do a clear out and we were just pulling out crap. And now I see, well, I spent time putting it in there, sometimes creating a storage area for crap, and now I'm pulling it out, and that's the waste. It would have been less of a waste just to throw these things straight in the skip. So that's a big change in mentality.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not giving you 3 very clear things, am I?
Well, let's talk about something that I'm very passionate about. You had 2 things that I felt were very, very, very important to the scalability of your business, which was your CNC machine and your edge bander.
Yes. And
I think that gained importance as our relationship went through the implementation of your factory. And I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're now in a position where the results of your CNC and your edge bander working in harmony together is really giving you that feeling that the automation within the core of the business is really important.
Yes, that's right. Automation. Yeah, definitely. I had an instinct for a long time that the CNC was what we'd need to get.
Yeah.
I think having your guidance in it was really helpful, making the right choice. And I do see that very much hand in hand with the edge bander, because it's the carcass work, just making boxes. Why would you make a box, cut on the panel saw and then paint it even, is what we used to do, when you could get a better result, frankly, with melamine.
Yeah.
And then cutting it on the CNC, no chips, sticking it through the edge bander, pre-drilling all the fixings. It's another mental shift, really, because you're going towards automation, flat pack furniture, and there's that craftsman part of you that thinks, well, this isn't craftsmanship, but the result is better. It really is. The squareness of the carcasses and the robustness of them.
Oh yeah, there's no craftsmanship for cutting square parts, right? It's just cutting square parts, but the craftsman part of it, you now have more time to actually do that craftsman stuff while your CNC is cutting. Yeah. For me, that's a big game changer, getting that department, that system in your business, supporting everything else that you want to do.
Yeah. And I think that touches on the work we've done on my goals and my values,
Yeah.
because that's been crucial to taking a practical step forward as well. What am I stepping into? Where do I want this to go? And so Linda, one of the other coaches, she's done a lot of work on our values. And I think I came into this with the assumption that your program would want to steer me towards running an ever bigger manufacturing business, sort of churning out stuff. But I never felt that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep the human touch. I wanted to have that face-to-face contact with customers and do bespoke work. But I also had, I had this desire for security and a bit more time with my family. So those things run in tension, because I see the potential to churn out standard work to give me more financial security. But we've clarified that. I suppose I'm somewhere between the two, where we're saying, well, we do want to up production of standard products, which may also be to trade, shaker doors, carcasses. The games table is a standalone product. So trying to have a stream of work that doesn't rely on bespoke consultation and design with each individual order. But then using that as a foundation to be able to do those enjoyable bespoke crafted products. So getting it, I suppose, just big enough that we've got that secure income, and it can run without me.
It is an interesting thing. Like, we often use the word growth, and you're right. It often, for some reason, it does conjure up these assumptions that we're saying we want you to be a big business. That's why we've now changed our terms to say right size. So the term is, what's the right size for you? So I think it'd be really interesting to hear, maybe talk a little bit about Freebird itself. Like, where are you located? Who do you serve? Like, what do you make? How can people contact you if they want to? How do we follow Alastair Johnson on YouTube? Like, what are the connection pieces here?
Okay, so we have a workshop in the Neeps End area of Sheffield, not far from Sheffield city centre. I actually live up in Barnsley. We serve the whole of South Yorkshire, generally try and keep within about an hour, but depending on the job. We specialise in fitted alcove furniture. So from quite early on, that was our specialism. Things made usually within a limited range of styles, but genuinely made bespoke to fit an alcove space. So that's something we've really refined, and can deliver to a high quality with a sort of predictable and efficient process. Alongside that, I'd say our other main product for fitted furniture is bedrooms, fitted wardrobes. But we are developing more standalone pieces, the main one of which is a gaming table, so aimed at board game enthusiasts, filling what I felt was a gap in the market for a table that is a well-designed and desirable dining table in its own right, that doesn't look like a weird games table, but then can convert to a gaming table, which just means it has a concealed recess where you can leave a board game or a jigsaw or Lego in play, and then put the tops back on and have your dinner without any risk of spillage going in, which has been one of the design challenges.
The non-spill lip in that joint is really cool.
We looked at what else was on the market, and we used different materials and different design approach, and I think do have quite a unique product. It also has these sort of clip-on cup holders and chip trays and things, which again we've made in a different way to anything I've seen on the market. That's been a slow burner, but we've got 3 orders we're working on at the moment, and I think after them we're going to get some real good publicity shots out and try and really grow this. But yes, to get back to the business and how you find us. So we are Freebird Interiors on Instagram, where I'm probably most active. Search Freebird Interiors on YouTube as well, or my name, Alastair Johnson. That's ALA. You'll find us. What else? That's our main platforms. We're on house.co.uk for marketing the fitted furniture as well.
And there'll be some links in this podcast in the show notes where people can click on as well. That'll be easy to find you.
I also have my own podcast, although it's kind of dormant, but we've done a few interviews on there, focusing mainly on, I suppose, your smaller scale joinery businesses, and looking at people's motivations, what led them to do the work they do,
Yep.
and how they're growing their businesses. So that may in future be revived, but haven't got the time right now.
So if we were to sort of talk about how you felt about your business, let's say 2 years ago, how would you summarize your feelings about your business then and your feelings about the business and the future of the business now? How has that changed?
I think 2 years ago, I was doubtful whether I would ever really feel that I'm on top of the business rather than the business being on top of me. Mm-hmm. The business dominated my life and my thoughts, and I couldn't escape it because it was in my own home. I think now I do see it as a separate entity. And I think if you really want to run a joinery business, that business has got to start running on its own. Otherwise, you don't have a business, you just have a very demanding job.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say they've got a business, but really, it's all on them.
High risk, no income.
Yeah. I would say I'm a lot more hopeful about the future. It does still weigh on me, and I still feel I'm carrying a lot of it. But as my team regularly remind me, I'm not actually carrying all of it. Maybe I need to carry less than I often think I do, because we've got the team in place and we've increasingly got the systems in place. So a lot more positive feeling. And I think it's interesting you use the word feeling, because I do think that success is driven a lot by feeling. And I think almost tricking yourself into having a good feeling about what you do is quite crucial. And so I think Linda's input about finding what I can be grateful for, appreciating what we've already done instead of constantly looking for the next step, has been quite crucial to just, I suppose, valuing where you're at. Just saying, well, I'm just even seeing what I've already got differently to what I already had 2 years ago, saying, well, that's okay. I'm doing all right.
Yeah, sometimes you've actually arrived and you don't know you've arrived because you're always looking for the next thing after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like, we're constantly impressed, and I'll give you a little bit of feedback. The one thing recently that we're really super impressed with is your communication system with your site team. So you've got a procedure that you have now implemented with how do you do your installation work and your fitting.
Yeah.
And you've now got this sort of virtual communication system going back and forth between your fitter and their communication back to you. Do you want to talk maybe a little bit about that and how that came about? Because it's a pretty impressive bespoke system that you've created.
I think since first taking on an apprentice years ago, I realized that communication is crucial. And we had a number of times where I thought I had communicated something clearly and it wasn't understood the same way in that person's head. So when COVID hit and we had our admin team then working remotely, I thought we need to have a way that communication is recorded and lots of people can be in on it without it being very time consuming. So we settled on the Google Chat app, and it's very simple. You have multiple rooms or spaces, I forget what they're called. So for example, we've got one titled installation, we've got another one titled error tracking, workshop notes. And wherever it's necessary, we'll have every team member in that chat, just so that they can check their messages and know what's going on. So a sense of connectedness. And I think we just encourage people to communicate so everyone knows what's going on. We then have a record so we can look back. I think it creates accountability, because if I've asked somebody to do something on a chat where everybody else can see it, then there's a sense of shared responsibility. I think there's a value behind it in my mind, where from little bits of reading I've done on company culture, if different aspects of a company are disconnected and they don't really feel they're serving somebody else, then things tend to break down. But when you know and like the person who's sort of next down the chain or above you in the chain, you sort of feel, well, I want to make life easier for them as well as for the customer. And I think just being connected through that chat app has really helped that to happen. So, I mean, sometimes we'll have procedures we want to apply, like doing a report at the end of the installation. And the installer, maybe they've done a long day, they just want to get the tools in the van, get cleared up, and it gets forgotten. And frankly, I used to be exactly the same when I was installing. And my wife was on at me. My wife's sort of co-director, administrator. And what I would say to her then is, well, we just need to find a way that is easy, but also where I feel this is necessary and not just a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
So I think keeping everybody in the loop and saying, well, look, we'd like you to do this report because it helps the business. It's a system that has a purpose. But then saying, well, how's that going to work best for you, rather than imposing it? And so with the installation checklist, we've settled on, rather than sort of tapping away on a computer or whatever, let's just do a printed sheet again. Tick the boxes, take a photo of it, upload it into the chat app, or we've got another app called ServiceMate. And so I think there's a sort of constant feedback loop where members feel that they have a say.
Yeah.
And members are encouraged, team members are encouraged to understand why we're doing a certain process. So yeah.
It's very impressive, because you're continuing to nurture and grow that and innovate within those communication channels. Now, the other thing I wanted to just talk about here, and we couldn't get out of a call like this without talking about your wife. Alison is what I would consider your secret weapon, because without her keeping everything kind of, I would say, even keel, and you're on the ups and the downs and she's more on the even keel, but she's also been very, very, very involved in the financial control of the business, hasn't she?
Yes. Yeah. And she's been implementing profit first, which is one of the principles you follow. We'd already looked into that. It's really great to come into a program that prioritizes that too. So yes, she's very good at just organizing and structuring the money, but also the scheduling. And I'd say she and Brady, I'd say, are my secret weapon. Well, I can't then leave out Camilla and Matt. We've got team members with real strengths. But yes, of course, my wife has a special place because she has to put up with the personal ups and downs as well as the business things. And I think for anyone watching this that's wanting to grow their business and not sure how, I think it's important to know you don't have to be good at everything. You can't be good at everything. And you need people alongside you that can be strong where you're weaker. And so Alison is much stronger than me at time-oriented thinking, structured thinking.
Yeah.
One of the words she often uses about me is haphazard, from how I put my shoes in the hallway to how in my head I'm planning the upcoming jobs. And I think people that follow me on YouTube and Instagram, they often seem to have an impression of a very well-structured business, and they assume then that I'm very well-structured in my approach and my thinking. I can be sporadically. I can create a great system, but then I can be very sort of absent-minded in applying it. Whereas Alison is, no, this is how it works, stick to that. So she'll hold me accountable, and she will structure the things in the background that aren't as exciting and don't grab my attention so much, like the finances.
Yeah, and this actually circles back to the first thing we talked about, was makers and creatives are generally not well structured or great at staying on rhythm and regularity with things. We're creators, we're makers, we like to be, think about what the next thing is. So it's perfectly okay, and that's why you build a team around you to cater to your strengths and their strengths. We don't really want to have to build a weakness or build upon someone's weakness when they're never going to be strong in that area in the first place.
Yeah. I think there are periods when you have to work in your weakness because you don't have this team member in place yet, but you don't have to forever. And I think just staying on the thing with Alison, because I think this is important to a lot of people running a small business with a partner, either formally involved or they're always going to be slightly involved. It took a long time for us to get to a place of sort of peace, I think, with both being involved in the business, because very early on, Alison was involved, but we clashed a lot. And a lot of that was probably my insecurity, really, of wanting to do it all. And deep down, maybe seeing that there were certain things she was better at, struggling with that. I think, as we've matured and the business has matured, we've found our role.
Yes.
Because you have to be fulfilled in your work. And we've both, I think, been able to say, well, I'm pretty good at this and she's pretty good at that. And that those things work together well. And it's good for both of us to do what we're best at. So it may take time. And I think for some people, it may be healthiest not to be involved in the same business. You've got to find what works for you. But for now at least, we both run it, and we both contribute things to it, and that won't be forever. I don't think either of us wants that to be forever. We both want to do ourselves out of a job and move on to other things.
What is interesting, we play with words quite a bit, and I like the words, the difference between the words involved and committed.
So again,
I don't the words involved and the word committed.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen the little cartoon of the chicken and the pig watching someone eat their breakfast, which is bacon and eggs.
Yes.
And the chicken's involved, but the pig's committed.
Yeah.
You guys are committed. Like, you're in this business, and both you and Alison are committed.
Yes, and it costs us and hurts sometimes.
Yeah,
yes.
it's just the way it is. Cool. So, look, this has been a really good chat. Is there anything else that we haven't covered here today, Alastair, that you think would be valuable, or people listening to this would find valuable of your journey along this growth challenge for your business?
Well, I mean, maybe just to drop in that with my online work, I have a member site, and my aim with that is to, I suppose, empower people who are in the situation that I've been in, and maybe still am in, where they're slightly reluctantly building a business because they're good at what they do, and they're not quite sure the next steps forward. So I'm offering on that site, so it's buymeacoffee.com/freebird, lots of information about how to build the sorts of things we build, like alcove units, but verging more and more on the business side. And I think it's definitely a very different offering to what you do at a very different level. It's just a relatively small monthly commitment. But I think the feedback I've got on it is it's partly just a sense of being connected to somebody else who understands.
Yeah, a community.
That's a lot of, yeah. So say again.
You're building a community there of people.
Exactly, a community. Yeah. So connecting, and that's happening naturally on Instagram. It doesn't need me to do that, because a lot of people on Instagram in the woodworking community say it's so great, and people just help each other for free. But then, I'm putting some structured content on there to hopefully really give value to people taking those next steps in the business. So that's where a lot of my focus is going, beyond the public YouTube and the Instagram. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, see what you think.
Beautiful. Great, Alastair. Well, this has been really enjoyable, and just sometimes it's nice just to stop like this and just reflect on the journey, because it does kind of sum it up, and it does put into context how far you've come. And I actually want to just congratulate you for continuing to take the steps forward. I know they're not always easy, and sometimes they're scary and they're painful sometimes, but you continue to take those steps forward, and you continue to engage with us on a regular basis. And when people that we work with do that, we make progress, and that's really the key to it, is forward progress is made by working together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you are.
One more brief thing. You said, did I want to say anything else? Just to say that there's been times in this journey with the joinery coach where you've really acted as coach. And I think I want people to know that it's not just about you teaching me practical things about lean manufacturing. There's been times when I've really needed you to help me get my head together.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the coaching part comes in, where you've met me where I'm at, and not made me feel like I'm failing because I'm not quite implementing everything we've talked about implementing yet. You've been able to say, okay, well, he's feeling a bit weighed down by this right now. And I get the feeling there's quite a lot of psychology behind how you work. You're willing to treat people as individuals and as human beings and help them to get to that next step, rather than just say, here's the step, good luck. So I've appreciated that.
Look, I appreciate you saying that too. And to be honest with you, and I always am honest with you, it's not difficult, because I've been in these positions myself. Other coaches who haven't been in the industry or let's say suffered the same things probably struggle to make that connection. But that's one of the things that everybody on my team relates to directly. We've all been there. We've all had those same experiences. So empathy, I think, is a really true value that we at my business anyway is high on the list of values. So yeah, again, it's really just a matter of continuing to work together and take steps forward. I'm really, really, really looking forward to what the future is going to hold for you guys, because you're absolutely right. The market is there. There's lots of work if you want to go out and get it. And that's not going to slow down for a long time. So the future is really, really bright. And I'm glad you stuck with it, because we've turned this thing into something really special.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm actually excited about the future. It's still not always easy, but I do have a lot more hope because I can see it working out.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, Alastair. Well, thanks for this. And anybody that's listening that wants to follow Alastair, notes will be in the links will be in the show notes, and you can click on all the stuff that's there. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll chat with you again real soon.
Will do. Thanks, Bruce. Bye for now.
Okay.